They say that if you ask, you shall receive, and it seems like Subaru fans have been asking for a turbo version of the Outback for quite some time. Well, here it is. We're pretty excited to drive this car because we like Subaru product, we like Subaru turbo engines, and the Outback has always been a fantastic large SUV. Now, we're out here in the Megalong Valley. This is pretty beautiful. I wouldn't mind moving the drive office out here, to be honest with you. But despite how pretty it is out here, this is actually the kind of place that the Outback is designed to spend its time in. It's a large SUV that might spend a lot of its time around town, but the Outback, not just in the name, is about exploring the Australian countryside, and it's right at home out here on these kinds of roads. As I said, we can't wait to take it for a drive, but let's first take a look inside the cabin. On sale now, the 2023 Outback range adds 2 XT model grades powered by the new turbocharged petrol engine. XT Sport and XT Touring both come standard with the new petrol engine. The 2.4-litre turbocharged 4-cylinder Boxer makes 183 kilowatts and 350 newton metres. The turbo engine is mated to a CVT and, as we would expect from Subaru, all-wheel drive. Spec highlights include a useful 2,400 kilogram braked towing capacity, retuned suspension, mild exterior revisions, a new wheel design, and a faster run from 0 to 100 kilometres an hour. That's something that Subaru claims is 22% faster. We don't know the exact number because Subaru doesn't quote it, but we'll test the 0 to 100 kilometre an hour sprint when we spend some more time behind the wheel. The entry-grade Outback starts from $42,690 before on-road costs, while the 2 turbocharged variants, XT Sport and XT Touring, start from $52,190 and $55,990 respectively, both before on-road costs. The second row is comfortable for adults, as befits the large SUV segment. You'll fit 3 adults across the second row if you need to, but 2 adults along with all their luggage for a longer trip is no problem. On that subject, there's 522 litres available with the second row in play, and a whopping 1,267 litres when you fold the second row down. Litres might not mean much to you in terms of the space available, but trust us when we say there's plenty for family buyers. One of the things we've always liked about a Subaru product is the feeling of familiarity inside the cabin, but also the feeling of solidity. The switchgear, all of the controls, it feels pretty tough and robust, and if you're buying an SUV as a family vehicle, that's a really important factor. So this feels like it will last, and it's really well put together. We like the portrait orientation of the infotainment display. That's really easy to use, and because we all use smartphones now and we look at them like that, that works really well also. The switchgear is easy to understand, really well laid out, and the cabin is comfortable. Visibility is good when you're behind the wheel. You can see all around you. The pillars aren't too thick, and this makes sense as a touring vehicle over longer distances because it is so comfortable inside the cabin. On that note, there's plenty of room in the second row, even for adults, and then of course a lot of luggage space back behind that second row, which is useful if you're loading up and heading off touring, or if you're just loading it up with the gear for the family around town. But the proof in this new Outback Turbo will be in the driving, so let's hit the road. Outback by name, Outback by nature. Well, it's probably not as silly as it sounds. As good as the Outback is on sealed roads, when you're driving either around town or heading off into the country, it's out here on these dirt roads that it's most impressed us. We've done a little bit of what I would consider light duty off-roading, and probably something that most Outback buyers will never do with their brand new SUV, and this is pretty capable, surprisingly so in fact. But on these regular dirt roads that you might be driving on if you're heading to a campsite, a winery, some sort of place that's a little bit off the beaten path, gee, the Outback's effortless. It just does this stuff so easily. It's comfortable, and it just manages to soak up the bumps without ever feeling too harsh. I really do like the suspension tune that Subaru has come up with for this vehicle, because whether we want to accept it or not, the road surfaces in Australia are pretty poor, and the Subaru manages to soak them up without too much difficulty at all. And I think that's the key to making this a practical large SUV for families, whether you're around town or whether you're heading off on the road, the fact that it's as comfortable as it is. Probably the last thing that's really worth mentioning is the turbo engine. It makes Really good power, really good torque. It does both of those things effortlessly. It's neatly matched to the transmission. It's all very smooth, regardless of the speed you're doing, whether you're on the highway or you're running around town, doing speeds up to say 60 or 80 kilometers an hour. It's all pretty effortless, and it feels like the Outback does it without ever really raising a sweat or without you ever asking it to work too hard. So I think Subaru's done a fantastic job of putting all of those factors together to deliver a practical, comfortable, and enjoyable large SUV to spend your time in. And I think that's the key. This really is an enjoyable family vehicle that's as much fun to drive over longer distances as it is practical for the family. One other thing to mention when you're behind the wheel and you're out on the open road is the integration of the technology. Subaru has a reputation for packing as much safety as it can into its vehicles, and it's fair to say that it's not intrusive the way that the eyesight technology specifically is integrated into this vehicle, so it doesn't annoy you while it's doing its work. And I think that's an important fact, because while most vehicles these days are pretty safe, the way that that safety technology is built into the vehicle and integrated isn't always seamless, but in the Outback it works really well. The infotainment system, the integration of Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, we've had a quick test of Apple CarPlay at launch. That's worked faultlessly, as you'd expect. It's wireless, obviously, in this car as well. You've got charging ports and the ability to store your devices and your small items without them flying all over the cabin. So I think the way the interior of the Outback is integrated and the way that you live with it day to day as the driver or indeed the passenger works really well. And once again, it's another strong point that makes this a very practical, large SUV for touring. One other thing to remember too, we mentioned earlier a little bit of the off-road driving that we did. The two specific off-road driving modes that the new Outback has got, they work pretty well too, and they're quite clever. So if you're a bit of a novice and you're heading into slightly sketchy countryside and you're a little bit worried, you just pick one of those off-road driving modes and you've got absolutely nothing to worry about. Well, the Subaru Outback, surprise, surprise, is an impressive large SUV. There's a lot that we like about it, having spent about a day and a half behind the wheel now, but I think for me the highlight remains the ride quality and the bump absorption. When you get out of the city, and the roads are bad enough in town, let's be honest, but when you get out of the city onto these chopped up rural roads, especially after all the rain we've had out here, this thing is completely effortless. It glides along and it's really, really comfortable. I think that's important for families who are going to be doing a lot of touring. As always, don't forget to hit like if you've enjoyed the video. Click on subscribe so you stay up to date with all of our latest video content and the full review of the new Subaru Outback Turbo to Drive.com.au.